Passion, talent, development. NCAA hockey offers all that, and its players graduate at a 93% rate. Trevor Zegras.
And they score on the lacrosse move!
Jake Gensel.
Gensel banks it towards the goal. He scores!
Cale Makar.
He scores!
Stars on campus before the NHL stage. Whether you're a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey.
My goodness gracious me!
Visit collegehockeyinc.com and follow at College Hockey.
Welcome to College Hockey Today. He's Brad Schlossman. I am Jayson Hajdu, and that was a newsy week around the world of college hockey. On top of that, Schloss, the men's Olympics begin today. We're recording on Wednesday. The men's Olympics today. Adam Gajan, the goaltender from Minnesota Duluth, is the active college hockey player on the men's side competing. And then just south of 50 alumni also taking part.
Yeah, you sent out that note yesterday. It's unbelievable how many different countries are represented. Some players on that list, I was like, I totally forgot about him. It's been a few years, but incredibly long list of college alums playing in the Olympics. I'm excited for it. The women's tournament is about to really heat up, once you get into the bracket form. So I think we're going to have a lot of really fun hockey to watch in the next little bit here with the women's tournament going into the quarterfinals in a couple days, and then the men's tournament beginning. It should be fun to watch.
Team USA debuts Thursday on the men's side against Latvia. Canada starts Friday against Switzerland. We also had the Beanpot wrap up a couple of nights ago. Yep. Boston College kind of rolled their way to their first Beanpot in a long time. They took down Harvard and BU by a combined 11-3 margin. In between that was a 6-1 home loss to Vermont, but Boston College Beanpot champions.
Yeah, they love calling that the Beanpot trap game. But impressive game from Vermont, really, in that one. But the big story is the Beanpot, and unbelievable that it's been 10 years since BC has won it. It's really been Northeastern's tournament the last decade. And this time, of course, it's BC, which the Eagles just kind of seem to keep getting better as this year goes along. They keep making improvements. And that was no different. Andre Gasso, a guy who's been out for a while with injury this year, he scores 2 goals in that game. Dean Letourneau just keeps getting it done. Really great story for a guy who really struggled as a freshman in college hockey, and the way he has popped has been a game changer for Boston College. And then, of course, the MVP, probably nobody's surprised, James Hagens. He played really well. Another guy I've just impressed by the way he's brought up his game in college is Luka Kluche. He's playing better right now than he was in the USHL. And that's a credit to Luka Kluche there for what he's been able to do. And obviously a big deal for BC to win that tournament.
You said BC seems to be getting better as the year went on, and I thought that was mirrored by Monday's game. It just felt like they got better as the game went on.
You could feel as the game went on that it was starting to tilt the other way. And BC was starting to take over. BU got the early goal. I think the power play was obviously huge. BC goes 3 for 4 on the power play. A couple of them, it was in the back of the net before BU knew what happened on that. Guys were just sitting down in the penalty box when they scored. So they struck quickly. BU did get a power play goal at the end, but special teams played a massive role in that game.
You also released Tuesday in the Grand Forks Herald an article on the Hobey Baker Award and 10 candidates as we sit here today. We can get into that a little bit and some of the guys you listed, but I'm also curious about your process. And I think you are on the voting committee this year, and you have been before. I think voters might be curious to learn what your process is like. I know you're watching these guys all year, but when do you start really digging in to whittling down some names?
I think right about now is when you start really paying attention to the guys who are going to be there. So the voting committee, we have nothing to do with the top 10. That is coaches voting on the best players in their league in the country. And basically we're handed the top 10. So I came up with a top 10 as of February 11th. It's still a month until they come out, and a lot can change in a month. I mean, look at
not much separation right now, is there?
There isn't. Like I came up with a list of 10. I have another list of 10 of guys who are on the radar, and the difference between my on the radar guys and my top 10 is not much, right? Like you could see any of those guys moving up and down based on a big month, and we're seeing some of that a little bit right now. We're seeing Ethan Wittenbach, who's going off right now. He's probably wouldn't have been on my list a month ago. Yet here he is as one of the leading candidates. So a lot is still to be played, but my process, I try to watch as many games as I can. So for me, when I'm writing stories and doing work and waiting for interviews during the week, I put on games on the TV all week long. And some of them I'm more dialed in than others. Like if I get a phone call during the game, hey, I might have to not be as dialed in, but I try to watch as much as I can from as many different teams around the country. I probably watch every team in the country at least once during the year. And a lot of teams, we're talking probably 8 times. So, and then the other thing is, we know some of the statistics. I also like breaking down some of the analytics. I like seeing how some of these guys are used in not just offensive situations. And that's kind of was one of the points in my column. I talked about a guy that I cover here in Jake Livanovich. He's got 23 points in 28 games. He's a 5'10" defenseman. You look at that and you say, oh, he's a small, shifty power play defenseman, right? Well, no, he is one of the best defensive defensemen in the league. He has played 20 more minutes shorthanded than anyone on UND's team. Wow. They're relying on him in defensive situations. I like seeing what centers are taking a lot of D zone draws. Who do these guys trust? Who are playing the big, tough minutes in these games? So it is points, but I also like to dig in further to some of the analytics and see the all-around value of these players and some of those types of things. So, and then of course there is the eye test. So, I've got Cruz Lucius on my list. He's 4th in the country in scoring. He passes the eye test too. Mm-hmm. You watch him play, you're like, oh, this guy is really good. I feel like Tyson Gross, the guy on my list, he's a guy where when you dig into the numbers, you're like, wow, that he's better than you thought originally. So those are some of the things I try to look at.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about separators you're looking for, especially when the race is so tight. How much do you weigh, for example, conference production versus non-conference production,
sure.
Time of year? Do you give weight to games later in the season as opposed to before Christmas, things like that?
Not really. I do look at who they scored against, though. Yeah, that is a big deal. There are some players who play a very weak non-conference schedule and will pile up a ton of points, and then all of a sudden things get harder and they don't do that. Some of the guys on my list, I feel, are guys like Ethan Wittenbach. Go look at his game by game, and when they played some of the top teams in the country, he scored in all of them. Like, so I think there are probably some people that say, hey, the ECAC is quite as strong as Hockey East, Big Ten, and CHC. Then all of a sudden you dig into the numbers and you say, well, what has Wittenbach done when he's played really good teams? Oh, he played BC. He had a point in that game. I know Notre Dame's struggling this year. He had 2 points against Notre Dame. Oh, they played Maine. He scored a goal both nights against Maine. They played BU. I know BU's up and down, but he had 2 points in that game against BU. So every time he's been faced with a Hockey East team or a Big Ten team, he's producing. So I think that is a big deal for Ethan Wittenbach. in his chase for the Hobey. If he's going and playing, obviously he had big weekends this weekend. He had a hat trick against Yale, 3 points against Brown. But if he was doing that, and then every time they played a Hockey East team, he was getting held without a point, I can tell you that is going to be brought up in the call, and it will be held a little bit against him. But when you do what he's doing, that's going to get attention.
It's been fun watching NHL and Flames prospect writers taking notice of Ethan Wittenbach lately. We've texted each other a couple of these things. I'm looking at one right now that I texted you, and it's the most points by a Flames college prospect in their year after their draft year and their point production. And this is a list of 6 names, and this is the company Ethan Wittenbach is keeping at the moment. Perry Berezan is number 1. He had 52 points in 44 games after his draft year. He was a key player on some early 80s North Dakota teams. Then it's Joe Nieuwendyk, Ethan Wittenbach, Johnny Gaudreau, Adam Fox, Matt Coronado. That's pretty good company for this freshman.
Yeah, I feel like the Calgary Flames fans and prospect followers are going to be huge college hockey fans coming up because they've got a lot of really good players. Cullen Potter at Arizona State, Cole Reshney at North Dakota. Muse, I think, is a Flames prospect at Michigan. He's obviously hurt and out for the year, but the Flames have a lot of guys in college right now.
Traded for Abram Weeb too, so a lot of guys to watch for Flames fans. Before we get into the around the country, one news item we didn't get to last week, I'd like to get into a little bit this week, was the news that Brendan Whittet is stepping down at Brown after 17 years as their head coach. That will be effective February 20th, so about 9 days from now. Citing family medical leave, Jason Smith, their assistant coach, will take over as interim head coach on the 20th.
Yeah, I read some of his comments in the College Hockey News article that was posted, and one of the things he talked about the new era of college hockey is one challenge Brown had was just retaining players because
what might have been right if they kept some of those guys this year.
Oh man, that program has recruited really well, and they just had a tough time keeping them there. And they have some really good players there right now again. But the challenge for Brown has been trying to keep their guys. You see Tyler Kopp is, signs, and Max Scott ends up over at Maine, and Ryan Botterill is one of, if not probably Clarkson's best player. And you could just go up and down the list for the last few years of prominent guys they've had. Yeah, Lawton Soccer. They've had a lot of really good players, and I understand his frustration because they've certainly recruited really well. And Luke Chris ends up being a key player at Providence, and it's tough. It's been tough for them, but recruiting wise, they've recruited real well.
Kopf and Max Scott were I believe their second and third leading scorers last year. Lawton Zocker was one of the top goalies in the conference, and he's having an outstanding season at Northeastern as well. So definitely a case of what might have been, but we wish Coach Whittet nothing but the best going forward. Stepping down effective February 20th, and Jason Smith will take over in the interim. Okay, let's switch gears. What did we learn last weekend?
Well, I remember, at the end, we always look ahead and we say, who are we, what matchups are we looking at this week? And you listed off 7 matchups between teams both ranked in the top 25 in the MPI.
Mm-hmm.
On Friday night, 6 of those 7 went to overtime. I think that
playoff
tells
hockey
me,
is here.
Yes. Tells me we are hitting that stage of the year where everything tightens up a little bit. The margins are narrow. Teams don't want to make mistakes. And we're going to have a lot of down-to-the-wire battles, I have a feeling. And last week seemed to announce that, okay, we're into the last month of the regular season right now. We're gearing up for playoff hockey, and the best teams going head-to-head, they were all tight games.
That means temperatures are rising too. We're in a college hockey group chat, and someone listed some of the penalties assessed last weekend, and the guys are ornery right now.
They are ornery. We're seeing some ejections from key players. We're seeing weird penalties. Yeah, it's but it's been an exciting time. These matchups are all going to overtime. We're playing 3-on-3 overtime right now. We will not be playing 3-on-3 once the playoff starts. For those that don't know, that it goes to 5-on-5. It stays 5-on-5 once the playoffs get going. So if your team's not good at 3-on-3, don't worry. If your team is good on 3-on-3, well, get it out of the way now. Get as many as you can, because the playoffs do go to 5-on-5.
Okay, let's go around the country now, and let's start in Atlantic hockey with a team we really haven't talked a lot about this year, and that is Derek Schooley's Robert Morris squad. 1 loss in their last 7 games after sweeping Canisius. Playing really good hockey right now.
Yeah, 5-1-1 in the last 7, and not only that, but they've played a difficult stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the schedule lightened up. They swept Holy Cross. Then they had to play Bentley, which is the far and away favorites to win Atlantic, and got a shootout win against Bentley, lost the other game. And then sweeping Canisius over the weekend. And this is a Canisius team that's been real good in the second half. This is the first time Canisius has been swept since before Thanksgiving. So a big weekend for Robert Morris. And all of a sudden you look at the standings, and Robert Morris is tied for 4th right now. And this, there is no Bentley left on the schedule for Robert Morris. There is no Holy Cross left. There is no RIT left. And there is no Sacred Heart left. Those are the teams at the top of the standings who Robert Morris was going head-to-head with. This is a chance for the Colonials to jump up and move up the standings right now.
There's a realistic path to 3rd place here. And if you look at the standings, they have 3 games in hand on RIT, who is up 9 points in 2nd place. So things could get interesting here if Robert Morris can keep it going.
Yep. So they're getting hot at the right time. Can they keep it going? They've gotten some pretty good goaltending in some of these games. 3 shutouts in the last 7 games for Robert Morris. So that is something that's been eye-opening to watch them. And when you're playing your playoff tournament entirely at home sites, you want to get as high as you can to give you a chance at as many home games as possible.
Yeah, it starts in goal with Charlie Schenkel, who had his first collegiate shutout. I think that was Friday, and then Lucas Massey also rotating in. They block a ton of shots. I think they have 70 more blocks than any other team in Atlantic hockey. So it starts between the pipes and out from the blue line. Yeah, that's a team to watch down the stretch here for sure.
Yep.
A couple other notes before we move on. Rick Gotkin coached in career game number 1300. That's a coach you have spoken with this year and covered in his final season as Mercyhurst head coach. And also note that Chris Hedden, the Air Force senior defenseman, hit the 100-point mark last weekend as the only active defenseman right now in college hockey with 100 career points. He's putting together another All-America type season.
Yeah, that's 3 straight 25-plus point years on the back end for Chris Hedden. He's one of those guys, it feels like he's been at Air Force for 15 years. He's been really good for a long time there, and he's doing it again this year.
All right, Big Ten time. Michigan State went head-to-head last weekend. They split their series. There's really no separation between these two teams. Michigan won Friday in overtime. Jaden Perron had the OT winner in that one. And then Michigan State turns around and wins Saturday at Little Caesars Arena. Jack Ivankovic did come back from Michigan rather unexpectedly Saturday night, but those two teams split again.
Yeah, kind of same thing as the first meeting. They played home and home in December, and Michigan got the first game, Michigan State got the second. Michigan gets the first game, Michigan State gets the second. I guess the 1 extra point this time for the Spartans. But I don't even know if there's a lot of grand takeaways. Friday night, I think the big deal for Michigan was coming back. You're down 2 goals in the third period against a team that's really difficult to score against. I thought, that was probably game over heading into the third, and Michigan able to rally. I think that's big. Saturday, Michigan State comes back and, was all over Michigan from the start of that game. So the race is on right now for the Big Ten title.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State closes the season against Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Minnesota. And those are the bottom 3 teams in the standings right now. Michigan State has a 1-point lead on Michigan. So it is in the Spartans' hands right now to win the Big Ten title. Michigan, big couple series coming up the next couple weeks. A lot of eyes will be on this weekend. Michigan is hosting Penn State. And then the Wolverines go to Wisconsin. So, the race is on, and really Penn State is lurking there too. Penn State
big series for them. They have 2 games in hand on Michigan, 6 points back.
Yes. We're in a 3-team race right now for the Big Ten title. And this is Penn State's opportunity to try to get back into that race. The Nittany Lions, the remaining schedule, they can do it. It is possible for them to climb back in. So we'll see. Michigan State in control, though, of its own destiny to the Big Ten title.
Michigan State's win on Saturday also enabled the Spartans to jump Michigan for the number 1 spot in the NPI. We'll keep an eye on that as well. In the CCHA, let's stay in the state of Michigan because Michigan Tech is coming on strong right now, 9-2 in their last 11, just 2 points behind St. Thomas atop the league standings, coming off a sweep of Augustana with a pair of 1-goal wins.
Yeah, how crazy is the NPI right now? You've got St. Thomas is 13, probably in the tournament there, but also you're not overly comfortable at 13. No. The first 3 teams out of the tournament, 16 Minnesota State, 17 Augustana, 18 Michigan Tech. So a lot of CCHA on the bubble right now. You mentioned Michigan Tech and how the Huskies are playing as of late. They're playing real well, and that was a huge weekend against Augustana to sweep the Vikings. Overtime win, a 4-3 win the next night.
It's Winter Carnival too in Houghton.
It was Winter Carnival, yeah. So that makes it even bigger weekend in Houghton. We never got to go there during the Winter Carnival. I always wanted to. Some people said it's so much chaos, maybe you don't want to go there, but I wanted to see it.
Yeah, we never did we? That's right. Yeah.
Max Koska-Purdy with the overtime winner. One of the several excellent players on that Michigan Tech team. I think Steven Sardarian is a guy who could be a Hobey top 10 guy.
Mm-hmm.
Koska-Purdy, really good player. Isaac Gordon's been a really good player. So can the Huskies bump up? I don't know who's going to end up making it from that league. It's Bowling Green's playing really well. St. Thomas has this weekend off, and then the Tommies play Augustana. That's going to be a massive series in 2 weeks. So. Also, Lucas Wallen's 13-game point streak finally came to an end. Longest in the country this year, I believe you said.
Yep.
Bowling Green, another team, playing pretty well.
Yeah, let's zoom in on the conference race. Right now, 5 points separate the top 3, St. Thomas, Michigan Tech, and Augustana. But in 4th place is Bowling Green. They're 7 points back. They have 2 games in hand on those other 3 teams.
Yeah, I'm not sure Minnesota State can get into the race. They're that would be a long shot to me. The other 4, they can get in the race, and especially because Augie plays St. Thomas head-to-head. Augustana is, 5 points back right now of St. Thomas, same number of games played, but when you play head to head, that can change it quickly. So I think we got 4 teams that can still win the McNaughton Cup.
Where is that series? The Augustana series is in Sioux Falls. Okay, and I just happened to notice, I wasn't aware of this until I was just scanning the standings page. Augustana has 1 home loss in 17 home games this season.
Wow.
13, 1-3 at home.
No way. I did not realize that.
So, yeah, that's going to be a great series to watch. Let's turn our attention to ECAC hockey. And we were chatting back and forth earlier this week about just an outstanding crop of freshmen in the ECAC this year. I'm not going to go through all of the names, but you go team by team, and there's 1, 2, or more impact freshmen. We've already talked about Ethan Wittenbach, but just a great freshman crop this year.
Yeah, just because of his massive year, I think we've kind of skipped over Varro and Vidicek, who have both had great years at Quinnipiac. Owen Van Steensel's a guy who, when I was out in North Country in October, Van Steensel was on the 4th line there. And now all of a sudden he is shot all the way up. He's a top line guy. I feel like he's always making plays every time I watch Clarkson play. Remy Jelena has been really good as of late. I think you mentioned he has
he's about a point per game or so since start of January, I think.
Probably since the start of December almost.
Yeah.
He's really come on. So those are a couple really good freshmen. Cornell's being really led by freshmen almost. Of course, Cornell has a couple really important veteran players up the middle. I think, when you have Ryan Walsh and Jonathan Castagna up the middle, that is a game changer. But Kate and Ryan has had a really good freshman year. Xavier Veo on D. And then, we've talked about Alexis Cornway and net and how important he's been, but that's a really good crop. And then even some teams that St. Lawrence, Rasmus Svartstrom, big 6'5" Finn. He has he's almost averaging a half a goal a game for a team that just does not score a ton.
Yeah.
Svartstrom has 14 goals in 29 games. He's having a really good year for St. Lawrence. And, Etienne Lassard at Union's been really good on the back end. Really good crop of freshmen in the ECAC this season.
Because you mentioned Remy Jelena and Etienne Lassard, that segues nicely into Saturday night's Clarkson Union game.
Oh.
Just a bomb. So I mentioned those 2 players because both of them had 4 points in an 8-7 Clarkson overtime win. It was 80s flashback night, I think, Saturday night in that one. There weren't a lot of shots on goal for a score of that nature. I think it was 35-33 or something like that. But I think you went back and rewatched this, did you not?
Yeah, I was saying I like watching games during the week. That was one where I was like, oh, I know where I'm starting this week. It was a goalie's nightmare. There were some goals that went in that probably weren't great, but there were also a lot of screenshots. There were a lot of really good finishes by the guys. It was like everything that can go wrong for a goalie in this game went wrong for the goalies. But it was entertaining to watch. That is for sure. It was back and forth. Just when you thought one team was taking control, then Clarkson goes up 3-1 in the first period. And then all of a sudden, Union's tied it in 30 seconds. And then, Union starts scoring in the third, and then Clarkson scores, and then Union gets the extra attacker. Van Steensel wins it. It was just chaos. So the people in Potsdam had a fun one on Saturday night. The coaches might have been pulling their hair out,
my gosh.
Boy, did I have a lot of fun watching that game. You had some power play goals. The only thing we didn't have in that game was probably a shorty, but that was fun to rewatch.
In Hockey East, speaking of fun, a team that's having a lot of fun right now is Providence. We've talked about them a lot recently. We're going to keep talking about them. They're on a 9-game winning streak. That's one shy of the program record. They're closing in on their first ever outright Hockey East regular season title.
Yeah, they've only won one Hockey East title, and the Friars shared it with BC 10 years ago in 2016. And right now, all signs are that this is Providence is for the taking. They're starting to pull away. They are 8 points ahead of BC and UConn right now. That is substantial. Man. I know BC and UConn have one extra game to play, but 8 points is pretty substantial. And then you look at the remaining schedule. They play a Northeastern team this weekend, a Northeastern team that has some dangerous players there. But, man, some of the injuries are piling up on Northeastern right now, too. And it's just key players. You know, Dylan Ritzkovian didn't play in the Beanpot on Monday night. Did not play in their game over the weekend either, I don't think. He's their top player. I think I saw that Jacob Matthew, the freshman, was wearing a letter in his absence. That's pretty impressive for freshman. But the other thing that really affected this team was when Joe LeMay went down with an injury early this year. That really chipped away at the depth on the back end. And that's Providence's next opponent. And Northeastern just has not been able to get it going. And it feels like these injuries it's not a team that could withstand some of these injuries this year. So Northeastern goes to Providence this weekend, and Providence is rolling. Then after that, Providence goes to Vermont, home and home with New Hampshire. There's a real chance for this Friars team to win this title.
We've talked a lot about the youth of Providence this year, up and down the lineup, a lot of freshmen and sophomores. But while you were talking, I went back and looked at the Hockey East preseason coaches poll. And kudos to the coaches, because despite the youth, they had Providence pegged second with 3 first-place votes.
And I was the opposite. I was like, no, this team has so many young guys on the D-core. Yeah. Like, I realized they've got McQueen and Sawyer and John Mustard and a lot of really good players up front. I know their goaltending's good, but it is a recipe for disaster to have a super young defensive core like Providence is going to have. I don't know if they're going to overcome it. I was wrong. Providence has overcome that young defensive core, and a lot of guys who are not flashy. They don't have the big names on the back end, but they just get it done. They're just really solid players.
And on top of that, they lose that senior goaltender to injury, Philip Svedback, and Jack Parsons steps in, and I think he's been the goalie of record for the entire 9-game winning streak.
Yeah, the last time Svedback played was that game he got injured in early January. So I'm not sure if Providence is keen to change that up right now. I mean, Svedback was playing well. He had a really good start, but Jack Parsons is playing even better right now. And, you know, maybe that some of those young guys on the back end are just improving even more and more right now. And, you know, Quinn Manti has been really big for that team as a freshman. You know, usually just it's tough for young D in college hockey, and props to Providence for being able to overcome that, because that was one team I had way lower in my poll because I just thought, man, that's too young. I mean, what's their only senior on their team is Svedback, and he hasn't played during that streak. They're doing it without a senior. Yeah. I mean, you look over at another team in Hockey East, BU. They have one senior too, and it's hurting them. They're finding out the challenges of not having older players. Somehow Providence is overcoming that.
Yeah, great story, no doubt. In the NCHC, Denver, after some struggles, I think to start the new year, seem to have righted the ship now. Unbeaten in their last 5. They just defeated Colorado College to win that Gold Pan rivalry series. 2 points behind North Dakota in the race for the Penrose, although North Dakota does have a couple of games in hand. But Denver back on track, it looks like.
Yep, Denver, Johnny Hicks stepping in for Quentin Miller in net. He's done a really nice job. sweeping Minnesota Duluth, pretty impressive. And now winning the gold pan back was big. The Pioneers go to Omaha this weekend, and they have a chance to put some pressure here on North Dakota coming down the stretch. It's going to be a tremendous race between North Dakota, Western Michigan, and Denver, because all three of those teams are playing well right now. But yes, a big weekend for the Pioneers to knock off CC, a CC team that has played pretty well despite the record. You look at some of the shots and the metrics and the expected goals, and CC's deserved a better fate a lot of times. Denver, played really well, able to come back on the Friday game from down 2 goals to tie that one. And it's a 3-horse race in the NCHC for the Penrose.
2 things strike me about Denver off the top of my head. They're getting the goals against down again. A couple of shutouts here during this stretch. Only 1 game where they've allowed more than 2 goals. And also, if they can find a way to keep pace here with North Dakota, they do have an off week after this weekend. But if they can find a way to keep pace with North Dakota has to close out the season at Schlossman Arena and against Western Michigan.
Yeah, North Dakota's got to be looking at these next 4 games all at home. 2 against Miami, 2 against St. Cloud. If North Dakota wins all 4 in regulation, it's done. They're going to be the Penrose Cup champions. However, if there's the slightest slip up, those other teams are right behind them, and their schedules, I don't want to say there's nothing that's easy in the NCHC, but they open the door for the possibility of a great ending for Denver and Western. So,
no doubt.
Yes, we'll see how these go. Miami, I'm excited to see Miami this weekend. First time in person. I've watched many of their games, but the resurgent Redhawks up to 20 in the MPI after beating Western Michigan on Friday night in Oxford. How about those crowds in Oxford? Oxford is buzzing right now. Their men's basketball team hasn't lost this season. The men's hockey team, 17 wins. I talked to one of their players who's been there the whole this whole time, the last 4 years, Blake Messenberg. I just realized that if Miami wins one more game, they will have as many wins this year as Messenberg's first 3 years on the team.
Wow.
Combined. So completely different year. And if you want some of Blake Messenberg's perspective, check grandforksherald.com/UND hockey later this week, because I had a great chat with him this week. Just interesting to hear from a guy who had gone through so many bad seasons and has come out on and gets to go out on a team like this.
Yeah, I won't ask you to give away the gist of the article, but you had some pretty interesting reasons. There are a lot of star players right now performing for Miami, but you had some interesting reasons to want to connect with Blake Messenberg.
Yeah, for sure. And number one was, you look at this roster, they have 21 new players. So most of these players haven't been there through the tough times. They don't know anything about this. They just showed up this year and they're winning. But Messenberg sat through all of that. And so I really wanted his perspective on it. And I wanted the other thing I wanted to know from Anthony Noreen is, why did this kid make it through?
Mm-hmm.
And he had some interesting answers on Blake Messenberg. So yes, we've talked about the Matteo Giampas and Kosha Delic and David Deputy, who is red hot right now, by the way.
Yep.
And everyone's talked a lot about Ilya Morozov, the potential first rounder, but sometimes some of those older players that are the glue guys are important too.
St. Cloud State got a welcome return from injury this weekend too, in the form of Tanner Hendricks. Yeah,
that's a game changer for the Huskies. He's a big pro style two-way D who can shut down guys, also add a little bit of offense. Got hurt 8 games in. He was off to a great start too. And so things could turn a little bit for St. Cloud here, and they started to last weekend with that sweep of Arizona State, and you could tell that they're easing Hendricks back in. Like, he didn't just jump in and play 20 minutes, but next couple weekends, I wouldn't be surprised if you see his minutes increase. That's a game-changing ad for a Huskies team that, they have some good players. I don't know if they have the depth of some of their other teams. Now, all of a sudden, you add Tanner Hendricks on the blue line, and the blue line has a lot of depth. So,
yep, a very good freshman for St. Cloud State. Part of it, we talked about ECAC's freshman class. Good luck to those at the NCHC who have to select the all-rookie team this year, because that's going to be a beast of an assignment.
Yeah, there's a couple leagues. It ain't going to be fun.
Okay, let's finish up in the independents, and we go to Anchorage, Alaska, where UAA faced Alaska as part of their Governor's Cup Series. The big story there, they played in Sullivan Arena in Anchorage for the first time in 7 years, had north of 4,500 fans both nights.
Yeah, Sullivan Arena is one of the larger. It's a good size arena. What is it? Probably 5,000-6,000 it seats.
Yeah,
something like that. So when we were making our trips up to Anchorage, that's where the Seawolves played for years and years and years. And in 2019, their governor went through some massive budget cuts in Alaska, and they ended up moving on campus to like an 800-seat facility, and they've been on campus ever since. And they decided, you know what, Governor's Cup, let's open up the big, let's go back to Sullivan. They did. Great crowd. They split. Anchorage won Saturday night in overtime, which had to be a pretty special win for the Seawolves back in Sullivan Arena. Yeah, first time in 7 years. I know you and I enjoyed our trips up there. And yeah, it's a good hockey arena. Fun place to watch a game. Fun place to cover a game. And it's not the last time they'll play there this year. They will play 2 more Governor Cup games there in 2 weeks. So a lot of nostalgia with them going back to Sullivan. I mean, I understand why they're at their campus rink. I would love it if they were back in Sullivan again. When we were going up there, the big thing there at the time, the Alaska Aces were in the ECHL. Yep. And they were like rolling. They were winning Kelly Cups, and the fans really got behind the Aces.
Well, hockey town, yeah.
It is. And it would be great if, with the Aces gone, if they could, really rally behind the Seawolves here.
Yeah, outside of those flights where I'd get stuck in a middle seat, nothing but fond memories of those trips. We knew we were going to eat well. We knew we were in a fun venue with fun fans. We knew Dallas Baldwin, the SID, would treat us well. We knew we'd get to talk with Kurt Hayter, the radio voice, and Doyle Woody, the great sports writer. I have nothing but fond memories of those trips.
Oh man, Doyle Woody had the stories. He was great. Yeah,
and Kurt Hayter had the candy for us all the time.
He always had those mints, the bear breath. We would always stock up on those. And we would go to the Glacier Brew House and enjoy a really good meal there. That place just smelled good when you walked in.
Just thinking the exact same thing. Yep, the wood-fired smell. Can't beat it.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, missed those trips. But yes, pretty cool to see the Seawolves playing Governor's Cups games back in Sullivan Arena. And you know what? It's been a tough year for UAA this year. 4-20-1. UAA has a shootout win and an overtime win against the Nanooks. They're making the Governor's Cup interesting.
Yeah, 4 games to go, like you mentioned earlier. I should note, too, that it was Aiden Weston with the overtime goal on the power play Saturday to give the Seawolves that win. Okay, let's look ahead. There's a handful of teams in the upper echelon of the MPI that are idle this weekend. Still some really good head-to-head matchups. Some interesting matchups outside of the NPI as well. What are you looking for this weekend?
Well, the 2 of the big ones that are interesting, Michigan, Penn State. FYI, NHL scouts have been informed Gavin McKenna will be playing in that series. In North Dakota and Miami, and there's a couple reasons why these are interesting series. Number one, if you are at Ann Arbor or Grand Forks this weekend, you are going to see a lot of guys wearing black pants and black jackets and carrying notebooks around the arena. And in college hockey, a lot of times you don't have draft eligible players. Most guys get drafted and then they come to college. But this is a prime scouting weekend because you have Gavin McKenna versus Adam Valentini, and you have Ilya Morozov versus Keaton Verhoff. So these NHL scouts can do 2-for-1s. So you are going to see so many scouts in Grand Forks and Ann Arbor this weekend because they can get 2 guys out of the way with 1 game. So that's kind of a little side story. In the big picture, these are important college games because Michigan and Penn State are fighting for the league title. Miami or North Dakota is fighting for the league title. Miami is battling for home ice in the quarterfinals. We will preview this a little bit more next week, but Miami plays Minnesota Duluth next week in Oxford. Massive series coming up. And then really, I think a couple of the others that everyone's going to be watching is the CCHA, all those bubble teams. Augie playing Bowling Green this weekend. That's going to be a huge series for both teams. So those are a few ones that jump out to me. Ken Bentley, by the way, closed down the Atlantic, playing Sacred Heart. That's a pretty good Sacred Heart team. If Bentley has a good weekend, then the Atlantic tourney is going to be going through Bentley.
Okay, we've talked about your Hobey article. We talked about your Blake Messenberg article. Anything else you're working on that we should look for the rest of the week here?
I hope to get a Dylan James feature out as well. Just one of those guys who stuck around for 4 years. He could have turned pro, could have signed, 2nd round pick of the Red Wings. He decided to stick around and wanted to be part of North Dakota's turnaround, and boy, has he ever. Career high 17 goals, career high 24 points, scored twice on Saturday night against Duluth. He's been fantastic this year, and potential for a good story there if the writer doesn't screw it up.
One of the top 3 goal scorers in the country too, since the calendar flipped to the new year. So we'll look forward to that as well. We'll look forward to a great weekend of college hockey. The playoffs are approaching fast. The stretch run is here. Schloss, thanks for joining us. Enjoy that great series this weekend in Grand Forks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Hodge.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. One programming note, we may not have an episode next week. That's still TBD based on my travel schedule next week. So up in the air. But until then, enjoy the hockey.